listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for letting us share part of your day. My name is Jerry Mitchell, and sitting beside me is Myra.
Good morning, everyone.
That will change starting next week on Mondays. As she cringes.
Yes, it will.
As she cringes. The good news is the doctors who have been working on your shoulder have decided that you are healed. After, 2 years? 2.5 years? 2.5. After 2.5 years, you're back to being medically capable of going back to work. Emotionally is a different story. After 2.5 years, you're like, I don't want to go back to work. And that's understandable, okay? That's understandable.
I love all the time with you.
Yeah. Not all the time. You fuss at me too much for that. But that's the good news. The bad news is on Mondays I will be unsupervised. But you'll be here on Thursdays.
Yes.
So because it is where you're actually going back to work is not back to the hospital, but something completely different. And hopefully
so there's no nights.
There's no nights. There's no weekends, and it will satisfy the legal aspects of all the stuff that you have to do to take care of that. So, and you never know when that's going to change again. You just never know. But
and totally no Shabbat work,
exactly,
which is amazing.
Exactly. So, anyway, which is kind of leading a little bit into what we're going to talk about today. That's being prepared. You've been, after your injury, preparing for a couple of years to get healthy again. But before we get into all that, I want to say this. And I got to say this because if I don't say this, I'll be sorry. When we think about prepping or being prepared, I like all those prepper toys. Okay? I'm just saying, I like them. I enjoy them. They're fun. Now, I'm not making a commercial here. But just think about all the stuff that they have come up with in the last several years to prep with. Everything from those cute little battery-operated can openers, right? Now, who needs a battery-operated can opener? If you're in a situation where you are in trouble, the last thing you need to worry about is making sure you have a fresh battery in your can opener.
If you can even get batteries.
But the can openers are kind of fun and cool. Right? It's a neat niche market. Then they have, the other stuff. They have the fire starters. Now, people have been making fire for a long, long time. All right? You don't really need all the latest gimmicks for a fire starter. But they're fun. You can play with them. They're neat. I even like the big stuff. The underground bunkers 65, 70 years ago might have been an okay idea. Now, not such a good idea. All right? So we're going to see that some of the things we've been preparing for might not be as necessary as you think they are. But the underground bunkers they're neat. An underground house is actually a good idea. There's a big reason we don't have that. It's because it doesn't let any natural light in. But it's a really good idea. It's a lot more efficient. It's a lot easier to construct. So there's a huge reason why they should work, but there's a big realistic reason why not everybody's living underground, okay? In fact, there was a local radio host who used to open his show in a kind of a funny way. He would start out from a deep underground bunker high above the cornfields. This is the so-and-so show. So it's kind of fun when you think about that kind of stuff. By the way, the chat room's open. If you have the free Spreaker account, you can join the chat. That's always kind of fun to see what people are talking about. If you like what you're hearing, by the way, those like buttons, they work really well. The 5-star things, those ratings, that helps too. I don't know how many people around the world may have been in the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts had a motto: be prepared. Always be prepared. Now, there's a lot of jokes that go along with that. But it's realistic. But the question really was, what are we supposed to be prepared for? And I know one of the local scout people who retired down here, they were scoutmaster for years, and his answer was exactly. You be prepared for exactly. That sounds kind of funny, doesn't it? It sounds kind of strange. But what he's getting at is you need to be prepared for exactly what you're going to be faced with. Now, a lot of times we get this feeling when we talk about being prepared, it's a bad thing. We're getting ready for something bad to happen. We're getting ready for a storm. We got to be prepared for the storm. We got to be prepared for this. Oh, what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? I got a message just a little while ago from one of our listeners who's talking about the U.S. government once again is looking at doing away with cash. They want us to be a completely cashless society. Well, that's been a thing for a long time. And I'm going to go down this rabbit trail just a little bit and say this. There's a lot of underground economies all over the world, and some of these are international. You have the drug economy, right? You have the human trafficking economy. All of these underground economies that flourish all over the world. Maybe it's time that believers started a believers economy. Help each other out instead of working against each other. Okay, just something to think about there. Just something to think about. That way, it doesn't matter if you have cash. It doesn't matter if you have credit. You work in these underground economies. A lot of ways to do that are perfectly legal for all you folks who think that Romans 13 is what's the word I want to use here? Demanded. If you don't understand Romans 13, you're going to think that following everything that the government's put down is the way to live, but it's not. All right? So you've got to be realistic in these things. You've got to understand what's going on. You've got to be prepared for the bad stuff. You absolutely do. More on that in a second. But you've also got to be prepared for the good stuff. Right? The good stuff needs sometimes more preparation than the bad stuff. If you have unexpected guests, the kind that you want to have, okay, the people that you like, the people that you enjoy, the folks you want to be around. I know a lot of people have unexpected guests that they might not think so much of them sometimes, right? But if you have unexpected guests, you need to be prepared to offer them whatever your culture is customary for. Whether you need to offer them water or coffee or tea or soft drinks, whatever. But you also need to be prepared to offer them something more important. Your heart has to be in the right place when these folks show up so that you can greet them appropriately, right? You have to be willing to have that open heart that's welcoming. So you not only need to be prepared physically, you need to be prepared spiritually and emotionally. Now, something Myra's going through, you've got to be prepared when you recover from an illness or an injury. You've got to be ready to either go back to work, or you've got to be ready to go back to functioning like you did prior to your illness or injury. We know a couple of people who were diagnosed with different things. Well, they weren't expected to live. One of them, who's typically listens to this show, after several years, he's still going, and saying, I shouldn't be here, right?
That's right.
So you've got to be prepared to keep going. You've got to be prepared to keep living. You've got to be prepared for life, right? You can't just be prepared to die. You've got to be prepared for life. We did the show last Monday? Last Thursday? Whenever it was, about you've got to be ready to keep living. You've got to be prepared for eternal life too, right?
Yes.
So think about that. There's a lot of good things you've got to get ready for. You need to be prepared to receive the blessings that your Creator wants to pour out on you. If your heart's not in the right place, you're not going to get those blessings. We think a lot when we think about being prepared about the bad things, the challenges that we might not want to face. There's a story about an old guy. And every time I think of this, I chuckle. Because there's a lot of good lessons in this story. Here's an old man who lived in the mountains. And he didn't always do the most legal things, okay? Now, for the people who don't live in the United States, a game warden is someone who is specifically charged with making sure that all of the wildlife laws are followed by people, okay? It's kind of like in Africa they have the...
game wardens?
They call them game wardens. There's the rangers, park rangers.
Maybe.
It might be what they call them on some of the big rangelands and Serengetis down there that they have in Africa.
Yeah, maybe.
These people are the ones who protect the wildlife, right? Well, in the United States, we have hunting seasons where you can actually go out and hunt and trap and fish and do different things with wildlife. And they use this as a management tool. But this old man, the game wardens looked at him and said, he's got to be hunting deer out of season. He's got to be trapping out of season. We know he's doing all this, but they couldn't catch him. They just knew he was doing things illegally, but they couldn't catch him. So they started doing surveillance on his house. They would sit and watch his house. When things were a little slower, they would slip out in the woods and sneak up on his house, and they would watch all night to make sure he didn't go out of his house and go do anything, because if they did, they could follow him. But the weird thing is, every time they did this old man would step out on his porch of a morning, and he'd holler out, "Hey, Mr. Warden, it's been a long night. Would you like a cup of coffee?" See, he was prepared for his company, right? And this went on for a long time. And it didn't matter if it was like a really bright moonlit night or if it was a dark night, if it was cloudy. Every time these game wardens would slip in through the woods and watch this fellow's house, every morning he seemed to know that they were there, because he would walk out and offer them a cup of coffee. Well, time went on, and the old man got older, right? And he was no longer able to get out. But he had this relationship with these game wardens, and so they finally sat down with him, and they asked him, "How did you know when we were there? How was it? We watched your house all these times. How did you know? We never found a camera. We never found anything. There was no tripwire, no warnings, no nothing." The old man kind of smiled and got a twinkle in his eye, and he said, "It's easy. You got to watching me so much. For the last 20-some years, I just got in the habit of every morning, just before sunrise, I would walk out on that porch and holler out, 'It's been a long night. Would you like a cup of coffee?' Didn't matter whether you were there or not." Now, the old man was prepared, right? He knew what he had to do. There's actually a lesson in the Bible about this, there's actually several lessons about being prepared, but this one especially. And we find it in Matthew 25, verses 1 through 10.
At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 girls who went to wait for the bridegroom. They took their lamps with them. 5 of the girls were foolish, and 5 were wise. The 5 foolish girls took their lamps, but they did not take more oil for the lamps to burn. The wise girls took their lamps and more oil in jars. The bridegroom was very late. All the girls became sleepy and went to sleep. At midnight, someone cried out, "The bridegroom is coming. Come and meet him." Then all the girls woke up and got their lamps ready. But the foolish girls said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil. Our lamps are going out." The wise girls answered, "No. The oil we have might not be enough for all of us. Go to the people who sell oil and buy some for yourselves." So the 5 foolish girls went to buy oil. While they were gone, the bridegroom came. The girls who were ready went in with the bridegroom to the wedding feast. The door was closed and locked.
Okay, so in this parable, the virgins, half of these girls were properly prepared and some were not. Even though they all fell asleep, some were ready and some were not. Some of them made it in and some didn't. A lot like the old man, he needed to adjust his lifestyle to accommodate for the wrong things he was doing. And you don't get that kind of attention unless you're actually doing some wrong things, right? But we need to adjust our lifestyle to accommodate to do the right things as well. If we don't adjust our lifestyle to accommodate things that the Almighty would have us do, then we're kind of going through the motions without reason, right? Interesting lesson in Proverbs 6 through 8 as well, if you want to read that.
Go watch the ants, you lazy person. Watch what they do and be wise. Ants have no commander. They have no leader or ruler. But they store up food in the summer, and they gather their supplies at harvest.
Now Solomon says to watch the ants and see how they live. They prepare for winter. They're ready, while many of the other insects are not. Now, of course, excuse me, our Creator didn't design all the insects to live through winter, did he? In fact, there's a certain family of wasp, at least, and I think this is worldwide. They lay their eggs in the larvae of certain beetles and other bugs. And these bugs and beetles become the host for the wasp larva once the eggs hatch. Once those wasp eggs hatch, they begin to eat the host from the inside out. The ant needs to store up food. It's not designed to live from a host. And I want to mention something here. Mankind's really not designed to live by sucking the life out of other things, right? There's a really interesting aspect about this we find in Leviticus 17:10 through 12. Just go ahead and read that.
I will be against anyone who eats blood. It does not matter if it is a citizen of Israel or a foreigner living with you. I will separate that person from his people. This is because the life of the body is in the blood, and I have given you rules for pouring that blood on the altar. You must do this to remove your sins so that you will belong to the Lord. It is the blood that removes the sins from your life, so you will belong to the Lord. So I tell the people of Israel this: none of you may eat blood, and no foreigner living among you may eat blood.
So we don't get to suck the life out of anything else. I know that sounds kind of gross. We're supposed to be prepared by storing food properly, so that when we have an abundant harvest, we make certain we have all the necessities ready for whatever we might be faced with. Isn't that amazing that much of the world doesn't do that? There's so many people who have begun to live in these small places, and they don't have the ability to store that much. They don't have the ability to really be prepared. They don't have they have physical limitations on space. A lot of people, at least in the United States, have a refrigerator in their house of some kind that keeps food cold. Some of these are very, very small. Other countries are very content not to have refrigeration because they prepare food differently. That's just their normal culture. That's their thing. That's the way they do it. Makes me wonder if we shouldn't be more like some of them sometimes with some of the things that we have. We've gotten very lackadaisical, I guess you could say. We've gotten lazy. We need to start being more like the ants and saying, we need to prepare better, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Most of the world was not prepared for the pandemic that we're in, or they say we're in. Most, if not all, of the people who were either mortally affected or severely affected, they had underlying issues of some kind. They weren't prepared for the virus to invade their bodies. Entire nations weren't prepared to have millions of people affected, either by getting sick or by not being able to go to work. We had that 15 days to flatten the curve where everybody was supposed to stay home and not be around each other. Now we're, 19 months into that? Yeah, it's just not working, is it? No real work got done for a long time, and it has affected the supply chain. It's extremely difficult to be prepared when you can't get the essentials you need to be prepared. You're living on the East Coast of the United States anyway. We have hurricanes. June through the end of November is our hurricane season. We expect to have hurricanes. Then we get a month off, and beginning in January we start getting the nor'easter storms. Some of those can be worse than the hurricanes. But they're coming, and you get ready. It's the season to be prepared. The central part of the United States gets a lot of tornado activity in the spring of the year. Right? Other places around the world have similar weather patterns and seasons, and they know they're coming, and so they prepare. Some people around the world are trying to wake other people up to the truth of the Bible by scaring them into some kind of action, hoping that they're going to get ready. Their intention might be good, but their tactics quite often have a negative effect. It turns people off. You kind of get tired of hearing, you need to get ready, 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 and nothing ever happens. We have a warning from 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 through 7.
It is important for you to understand what will happen in the last days. People will laugh at you. They will live doing the evil things they want to do. They will say, Jesus promised to come again. Where is he? Our fathers have died, but the world continues the way it has been since it was made. But they do not want to remember what happened long ago. God spoke and made heaven and earth. He made the earth from water and with water. Then the world was flooded and destroyed with water. And that same word of God is keeping heaven and earth that we have now. They are being kept to be destroyed by fire. They are being kept for the judgment day and the destruction of all who are against God.
So we have all of these warnings, and people get tired of hearing the warning, and they get tired of, you're just a conspiracy theorist. Nothing's ever going to happen. Currently the entire Atlantic seaboard, whether it's the United States, Canada, and parts of Africa, even parts of Europe, are watching intently to see what's going on with the volcano in the Spanish Canary Islands. It's expected, and one of the theories is that if this island all falls apart at the same time, there's going to be this huge tidal wave. And whether you believe that or not, I'm I'm not saying whether it's going to happen or it's not going to happen. What I'm saying is not watching it is not being prepared. You have to be aware of these things, but at the same time, you don't live in fear. If you live in fear, where are you going to go? Right? You're not going to escape. You just have to be ready. Just after World War II, the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, acquired a nuclear weapon. And in the United States, there was a lot of bomb shelters that were built. People wanted to be prepared for what they just knew was coming. We were going to face nuclear annihilation. Right? That may be a threat in the future. Right now, it doesn't seem to be as much of a threat as it was about 60 years ago. Later, in the 80s and 90s, we had biological weapons. That was just going to be the end of us all. People were buying gas masks, chemical suits. They wanted to be prepared for what was coming. After that, the New World Order seemed to be what they were looking at. Now, we talked about that just the other night, right? Yep. No nation was going to be safe because every nation they just knew something was going to happen. And they didn't want to be part of it. And nations formed alliances because they wanted to be ready. In the United States, people are still afraid that they're going to lose their freedom. We still have quite a bit, but they really are dwindling. And that's why, in the United States, there's arms and ammunition that are really in short supply right now. They're hard to get because people want to be prepared. But all too often, people prepare for the crisis that never manifests itself. It never happens. And we get lackadaisical. We get, it's been like this forever. We've never had anything. We're not going to worry about that because that can't happen. That can't happen. We allow our fear to dictate our purchases, no matter how fun they can be. And let's be realistic. Who doesn't like the toys that comes with the prepper stuff? Seriously. The lanterns, they're neat. All that stuff's kind of fun to play with. But for almost 6,000 years of history, since creation, mankind has survived with little more than 2 items. Just 2. A knife and a fire. When you really get down to it, mankind needed a sharp object and something to keep warm. But how does that concept apply to your spiritual survivor? What do you need to be prepared for a spiritual battle? Now, your Christian friends out there are going to say, it's the full armor of God. Well, that's a really good image. But you know what? All you need is one tool and your fire. Your one tool is the sacred word of the Creator. And that fire is your faith, your complete trust that the Creator of the universe is going to keep every promise that He has ever made. Everything else is toys. They're neat, they're fun, but they're toys. The Word of the Creator contains the wisdom to show us how to live and trust in Him. Let me say that again. The Creator of the universe gives us the wisdom and the examples to live by faith and trust in Him. Should we be like the ant and have some food stored for unexpected event? Of course. Even if that unexpected event is, company that knocks on your door when you're not really expecting them. but you have to be ready for them. Do we need an underground bunker filled with survival gear so we can burrow in by ourselves? Well, that might not be the best thing to do for a couple of reasons now. Let's face the facts. If you are found in an underground bunker, you know how the easiest way to deal with you is? They just cover you up. They just cover you up. You're in there by yourself or with a few people, and if you can't get out, you can't do any harm. Right? You're no longer a threat. Isn't it amazing that you are no longer a threat when you used to think that the people above you were the threat? You see, the enemy divides, the Creator unites. The best way to prepare for exactly what you're going to be faced with is to adopt the lifestyle your Creator designed you to live, following His instructions. The way you're going to be ready for anything that could possibly happen, whether it's good or bad, is if you're already living the way He designed you to live. That way you're going to be healthy. Your body's going to have the ability to fight off the little bugs, right? Now, it's not going to fight off the radiation sickness unless you give it some help. But for most everything else, those nasty little microbugs that want to attack us, if you're living the way you're designed to live, you're going to be able to have a body that will fight them off. Living the way we're designed to live, and this, I need to learn this lesson, okay? We are actually social people. We need to depend on each other. We need to have people that we can depend on, and they need to know they can depend on us as well. Living the way we're designed means that we have access to protection from the Almighty, so that when we leave this mortal body, we get a better one. Living the way we're designed to live means we have access to that eternal life, and we don't need to fear the second death. Living the way we're designed means that we can be confident in the choice we made to be obedient and trust our Creator. But living the way it is designed might not be enough. You see, you can go through the motions, but if you're not committed to it, it doesn't do you any good. If your heart's not in the right place, you're not going to be really ready. 2 Chronicles 25, 1 and 2. Amaziah was 25 years old when he began his reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jehoaddan, and she was from Jerusalem. But listen to this verse 2. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, but not with a perfect heart. Now, this perfect heart in Hebrew, the word is shalem. And if that sounds a lot like shalom, there's a reason. It's because it's the same root, okay? His heart wasn't perfect. His heart wasn't satisfied. His heart wasn't peaceful. His heart wasn't loyal to the Almighty. He was going through the motions, but he wasn't liking it. Kind of like Jonah. He's walking across Nineveh, and he's delivering the message, but he still hates the people. Afterwards, Jonah goes up on the hill, and he's like, okay, God, strike them down. God said, no, I don't have to. Right? They repented. They did what they were supposed to do. If you read the account in the rest of 2 Chronicles 25, it gets really interesting, because here Amaziah actually brings other gods into the land. He was going through the motions, but his heart wasn't in it. He didn't have that perfect heart. He didn't have that loyal heart to the Almighty. So even when we follow the instructions exactly as commanded, we're not going to enjoy the benefits and the blessings if our heart's not in the right place. We're not going to get what we desire. We might get what we deserve, but we're not going to get what we desire. We need to prepare ourselves for exactly what we're going to meet, what we're going to be faced with, what we're going to have to do. And you can be ready for unexpected company. You can have extra food in the refrigerator or in your pantry or wherever you keep it. You can have the coffee and the tea and the water and the soft drinks or the whatever. But if all you're doing is offering it because your culture demands it of you, don't you think that your company's going to notice that you really don't want them there? If all you're doing is going through the motions to please someone or your creator, but your heart's not in it, guess what? It's not going to work. Now, I know a couple of people who have a desire to do things and help people. And one person in particular, I know their heart was in the right place, and they did some things. They actually donated a lot of money to have something built that would help and benefit people, and they were degraded. Well, I don't know if I want to use the word degraded, I guess is a good way to say it, by someone else who said, well, you can't buy your way into heaven. Well, if you're going to judge somebody's intentions and somebody's heart, guess what? You're no better off than they are. Just because they don't know how to do it, but they're trying, don't you think that's not going to work? Psalm 44 speaks to this. Psalm 44 says, even if we forget the name of God, it's okay. He will look at your heart and find out, are you looking for me or are you looking for somebody else? We don't have that ability. When it comes to being prepared, you've got to be prepared for whatever and exactly what you're going to be faced with. Good and bad. But it begins not by going to the store. It begins by looking inside. It begins by preparing your spirit and your mind and your heart. That's where it has to start. Being prepared is far more than having food stored up for the winter. Being prepared means making sure that you have that peaceful heart so that when you meet your ultimate company, or when you're the company that meets the ultimate host, when he looks in your heart, then you will have the eternal life that you desire. Did you have anything that you wanted to add to all of that?
Thanks for listening to us today, and I'm going to miss everybody for the next however on Mondays.
Yeah, but you'll be here on Thursdays.
Yes.
All right. Until next time, everyone. And that's Thursday night, 7:30 Eastern. Many, many blessings.